Welcome, welcome, and thank you for being here. This is the opening session from Mapping to Impact, a webinar to action series designed specifically for cost action stakeholder teams. And over the next 15 minutes, I want to do one thing to introduce a framework that takes a cost action from its founding of memorandum of understanding all the way to long-term institutional embedding. The line you see on the screen captures this ambition. It's from scientific knowledge to policy relevance, regulatory science, and societal uptake. Not dissemination, translation. This is the distinction we are going to spend this session on. A brief note about where this work comes from. I'm Theo Zacharis, I'm the founder of the Greek Scientist Society, and the concept and framework design that you are going to see has been developed and applied across several cost actions over the past period. I want you to know that what it follows is not theory, it's a model that has already been tested in live actions with live stakeholders and live deliverables. So I start with with a video about myself. Okay, now to the problem. The left-hand side, we see the old model, the typical model, the old model. So in stakeholders, we see engagement are just an event. We meet, we discuss around certain topics, we create some reports, and then we archive. The outputs accumulate, but rarely insert themselves into decision channels. On the right-hand side is the alternative that I want to propose. We start with mapping, we outreach, engage, co-develop, and then embed. So engagement is on as architecture, not just an event. It is a sequenced pathway designed to convert dialogue into impact and impact into legacy. I'm speaking about a new strategic approach from MOU to legacy. It's an alternative approach, a top-down sustainability thinking. So the framework is built around a single principle from MOU to legacy. We begin with where every action starts with the memorandum of understanding, the formal outputs defined in the action MOU, and are the starting point for identifying opportunities with long-term relevance and application. Not your publication list, not deliverable tracker, the MOU itself that reads as sustainability instruments from the start of the action life. Once the MOU is in view, the second step is to map the key stakeholder groups who could adapt, scale, or influence the use of those deliverables. We use a quadruple helix lens for this. The academia, industry, the government and civil society, so you can ensure that the engagement is systemic rather than partial. The question shifts from who should we invite to our works and our events, to who shapes the decisions, the standards, the funding, and the narrative for this domain. The third element is the co-development of the strategic use paths. This is where framework departs most sharply from traditional dissemination thinking. Each prioritized deliverable gets matched with a targeted activity, piloting, standardization, policy recommendations, capacity building, depends on the case, that gives a route into real-world uptake. The use path is not chosen at the end, it's chosen early, and the rest of the world flows towards that direction. And the fourth element completes the picture, post-action sustainability project, or PASP, as we used to call them. Promising deliverables are matched with ownership models, sustainability mechanisms, and future funding pathways, so that the continuity is built by design, not improvised in the last 6 months of the grant. We work proactively. This is what makes the framework from MOU to legacy, rather than from MOU to the end of the project. A living example of this is the Kinesis Innovation Center, which is a PASP of COST Action Physics Net. It is one example of what this looks like in practice. The analytical toolkit, we have 6 instruments in there. It's a short interlude on tools because the frameworks rest on 6 analytical instruments that some of you may know or you will encounter for first time. So we have the stakeholder analysis. We evaluate stakeholders by interest, influence, power, and support to prioritize engagement. We have the power interest grid. We plot stakeholders by interest in the project and power to influence it. And we identify who needs our attention. The third is the well-known SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that stakeholders bring to our work. The silence model is one model that I like it a lot. We classify by power, legitimacy, and urgency. So there's a kind of prioritization to understand who must be given the priority and when. The influence impact grid assesses stakeholders by influence over the project and the impact the project has on them. And the engagement assessment matrix is a comparison between current desired level of engagement for each stakeholder, so we can plan the gap. Each one of these tools does a specific job. We will not work through them today, but the takeaway is this: stakeholder prioritization is not intuition, it's a structured analysis, and these are the instruments that turn a stakeholder list into a sequenced engagement plan. An example is the ill support COST Action, working on European eel reproduction and aquaculture. And the stakeholder analysis was structured across 3 working tabs. The first maps the stakeholder groups by influence score, tied to working groups and MOU sections. The second identifies the stakeholder critical to specific deliverables, which recommend actions across the lifespan of the COST action. The third tab lays out a sequenced round robin of engagement rounds, completed, active, priority, upcoming. That turns the stakeholder list into a deliverable driven engagement plan. We have identification, then criticality, and then action. It's one operational instrument. A reminder of what we are building towards. The objective is not participation. It is not in engagement for its own sake. The objective is structured code development, policy translation, and long-term legacy. So we have three shifts from dialogue to direction. Every direction ends in a defined deliverable, not a generic discussion. From outputs to channels where co-developed products are placed the decision channels they were built for, and from projects to legacy, where continuity is anchored through PASPs, advisory mechanisms, follow-up grants, depends on the case. So if you remember nothing else of this session, remembers those three shifts. The framework follows a sequenced architecture. Framework runs in 7 steps. Each one is defined output that fits the next. So we have strategic mapping, analytical prioritization, calibrated outreach, internal alignment, stakeholder structured engagement, co-development of outputs, this is quite critical, and embedding and legacy. Each step closes with a defined output that fits the next. So prioritized matrix, sequenced outreach, validating framing, agreed roadmaps, defined products, finalized briefs, institutional channels. The architecture is sequential by design. You cannot skip one step, and you cannot reorder them because the output of each step is the input to the next one. So the steps from 1 to 3 is from identification to positioning. Map is not a list, is a strategic instrument. Let me walk you through the steps. Step 1 is the strategic mapping, where they defined by policy domain, regulatory relevance, level of governance, alignment, potential across the DGs, policymakers, agencies, regulatory agencies, standard bodies, advisory mechanisms, the industry, civil society, research networks, all the different kind of stakeholders. So we have a prioritized matrix, defined engagement objective for each. The second step is the analytical prioritization. We move here from identification to strategic positioning. We use different kind of tools, as we said before, and the prioritized engagement tiers and defined positioning narrative is the output for this step. The next step is the calibrated outreach, which is not an invitation, but it's a calibrated positioning. We have tailored briefing package for each different stakeholder. We have a clear problem framing based on their needs, stakeholder-specific messages, and a defined ask. So we have different tiers with different approaches, and the outcome, the output here is a confirmed initial participation and validated problem framing. Steps 4 and 5 are the bridge from internal alignment to first external engagement. The internal clarity that prevents external dilution is the headline of step 4. Before the network speaks publicly, it has to agree internally on the level of ambition. Are we informing? We are influencing, co-developing, or institutionalizing. Each of those answers leads to a different format and a different commitment of resources. Before we move to step 5, which is the structured external engagement, and it's the first calibrated interaction with selected stakeholders. The objective is not broad consultation, but structured validation that ends in a decision. So the four-part format that you see, framing, the breakout, barrier mapping, convergence, is what distinguished structured engagement from a generic workshop. Step 6 and 7 are where dialogue becomes impact and impact becomes legacy. Step 6, it's called development of policy outputs. We suggest to have a small drafting group of 5 to 8 stakeholder task force actors. 3 to 6 months, a concrete output. The co-authorship is what builds ownerships. No matter if we speak about the policy brief, a regulatory map, roadmap, consultation, submission, standards proposal, position paper, usually, implementation guidance, you name it. So the output is the finalized policy product, dissemination plan, identified institutional entry points. Step 7, institutional embedding and legacy, is where the framework earns its name. The output is presented as a targeted impact event, submitted to a consultation processes, briefed to policymakers, anchored perhaps through a PASP for long-term continuity. The objective is insertion into decision channels, not symbolic visibility. It's from temporary engagement to recognize recurring policy interface, and this is the legacy ambition. So, a practical word on timing. The 7 steps mapping to 12 to 18, depending on the case, month cycle, which can be adapted to the COST action grant period, the working groups, and the policy ambitions that we have. This is an indicative plan. If you are in year 1 or year 2, you have the time to run the full cycle. If you are in year 3 or 4, the framework can still be applied. We adapt the timeline to where you are now. The framework is the foundation. The series builds on it. From mapping to impact is being opened to the wider COST community through this webinar to action series that is hosted in our platform. The positioning is straightforward. The webinars create the shared frame. The applied formats create the stakeholder engagement. The follow-up outputs create the policy value. And the series is organized around thematic anchors, evidence synthesis, regulatory science, open science and data, innovation pathways, science diplomacy. So each thematic session will need a dedicated sub-series that we aim to co-develop with COST Actions, which their work sits at the center of this theme. And let me finish with an invitation to COST Action Stakeholder Teams. This session is the opening. What I'm asking from each of you is participation in 3 formats. Patronage and opening remarks. It is your voice, it's your actions voice in the framing of subsequent sessions. Thematic participation as use case is your actions work as a work example in one of the thematic sessions, and co-development of policy outputs. It's your actions expertise built on position paper, policy brief, or regulatory roadmap that the framework helps you produce. So we ask you to organize a session, shape a policy product, build a recurring policy interface for the betterment of the scientific community. And with this, I'd like to thank you, and I look forward to our discussions. Thank you.